Okay, hello and welcome back. All right, we're going to talk about maintenance today, and I'm now trying to dig into a problem with this vehicle. She cut out on me at the wrong time. The MIL light came on, which is a malfunction indicator light, came on the dashboard, and it only cut out briefly. As soon as I pulled the clutch back up again, she started, and I was away, and I was moving at some sort of speed. Now, with some vehicles, they're multiplex, which means that they have ECUs that all run on their own signals. They're not all fixed to a CAN, and this is one of those, all right, where you have to go into each ECU separately. Later vehicles, you can go through an ECU which is a gateway ECU, or a BCU, which reads all of the information and it brings it up onto the scanner, which will be through the CAN network, or communication area network. Yeah, that's a lot easier to do, whereas this, they all operate on separate pins. The scanner will do that. This type of scanner will. Some scanners won't do them, the cheaper ones won't do it. I can read live data, and this is what I'm going to have to do once I finish talking to you, is to have a look and see how the clutch switch is working. It could be a wiring fault, because that's what it's telling me. Okay, I've gone into engine management, read the codes, it's come up with a P code, P for powertrain, and yeah, that's as simple as that. Okay, anyway, we'll get into this sort of diagnostics a lot later. We need to do the basics first of all, and one of those, and I've written a list here, is to have a think about what sort of maintenance you need with your vehicle, right? So with my list, I'll cover each one of these in turn. There's only 4 of them, and I'll give you a little story as well, because I like stories. Yeah, I like telling you stories anyway. So basically it starts with you and your journey with your vehicle, and you have to, first of all, you have to take into appreciation of the vehicle, the type it is, the age of it, and what sort of history it's had with it as well, because some vehicles have been abused in their lives, whereas others have been looked after really, really well. Don't believe for one instance that one careful lady owner these days is going to drive a vehicle carefully, because actually it could be a detriment, right? So also we need to take into consideration vehicle usage. So say you have a car, okay, use it for daily work, and then you want to bug out with it, maybe put extra weight on it, then you have to take that into consideration, because the more weight you put on the vehicle, the more you use the vehicle, the more maintenance you have to do on the vehicle. And the bigger the vehicle is, the heavier the vehicle is, the more time that you're going to have to spend with maintenance. That includes 4-wheel drive vehicles that are designed for off-road, simply because there are more components involved, there's more fluids involved, there's a lot more things moving about. Yes, okay. Bicycle maintenance once a year, isn't it? Pump your tyres up every now and then, and you're well good to go. Cars generally are designed to be fairly low maintenance for a long period of time. Once you get into vans and trucks, buses, RVs, stuff like that, then of course the maintenance is going to have to go up. You have to spend time looking at it. Commercial vehicles, for instance, the trade that I work in, they come on a 6-weekly or an 8-weekly cycle, which means they have to, by law, be inspected to make sure that everything is okay and it's safe. And of course then when it comes in for a safety inspection, it can then have fluids changed on its service interval depending on the mileage. And of course again, it's down to usage of the vehicle. Some vehicles work in very extreme environments, like sand pits, or maybe desert environments, so that's something that we have to pay attention to. Yeah, so the other one here I've got on the list is conditions, or in the environment that the vehicle works in, or predominantly works in. Okay, now yeah, like I say, with tipper trucks, yeah, they work in sand, that has its problems. You get dry, dusty places, that has its problems with dust and abnormal wear and tear. Yeah, wet areas like the UK, you can see here it's raining, and it's been raining on and off, then of course that's corrosion and water ingress. Yeah, and then of course you have a mixture, yeah, hot and cold, hot and cold, hot and cold. And then of course you have the road conditions that you're driving on. In the UK now, actually the roads are getting pretty bad, because they're not spending the money on filling the potholes, which means that you can be hitting potholes. That has a consequence to that. Wheels, tyres and suspension components as well. Yeah, okay, the last thing I want to talk about is planned usage of what exactly you want to do with your vehicle, the type of mileages you would expect, the environment it's going to work in, and also what you possibly need to use the vehicle for in a bug out situation, which could actually change the dynamics. And this also comes under unexpected usages as well. Okay, so let's talk about your vehicle type. Yeah, vehicle type, age and history. Now, I know some preppers will want to plump for an older vehicle because they have less technology on them, which is all well and good, but then the age of the vehicle is going to make a hell of a difference to how you approach your maintenance routine. Okay, I would expect if I get an older vehicle, everything has to be checked out and everything is suspect. Everything is suspect, which is tyres, wheels, wheel bearings, gearbox components, engine components, which would need to be tested. If it's a new vehicle to you, you have to get an idea of the condition of the vehicle and what you're dealing with. From a mechanic's point of view, if you want longevity out of your vehicle, you have to understand very deeply what is involved with that vehicle. Okay, so I'm running a 2002 Citroen, which is a diesel, and it's done 100,000 miles on the clock already. And yes, she has her problems, and I know the maintenance that I need to do with it, and because I've owned it for a little while, I've already done a certain amount of maintenance, so I know that I can leave those until it comes up to another routine scheduled change, i.e. oils and brake fluids and things like that, brake shoes. But you also need to check them on a regular basis. Yeah. History makes a hell of a difference to a vehicle. Now, if you've bought a fleet vehicle, some people buy them and they think that they've been looked after very well. Well, no, they've been looked after by the book, by the mileage, and that doesn't include if a vehicle has been sat idling for long periods of time. It may have gummed up the breathers, for instance. Yeah, there's all that sort of thing you have to consider. It might have been abused by the multiple drivers, yeah, or it could have been used by one person or two people, had 2 or 3 different owners, and they've regularly had service intervals done on time with the vehicle at a garage where they've been trusted. Yeah. Service records on vehicles, yes, they get stamped when the vehicle's serviced, but if it's been done in a cheaper way, yeah, on a service contract, they might have skimped on things just to make their money up. This is something that I would suspect with a vehicle straight away, especially if it's new. If you've had the vehicle for some time, you will have an idea of what sort of maintenance schedule it's had on it, and then you can go by mileage to expect what to do with that vehicle. Okay, so which leads me on to vehicle usage. Okay, now like myself, I use this vehicle, I do about 400 miles a week. Yeah, so that's very high mileage for this vehicle, which is actually good in the long run because everything gets warm and it gets run. Okay, downside is, of course, everything wears up. Clutch grease will go hard in wheel bearings, for instance. The engine oil needs changing quite often. Wear and tear on the brakes as well, the brake components and transmission components. And because of the road conditions, then I have to pay attention to the suspension quite often. The UK roads aren't too bad, but some of the roads around my specific area, they have potholes and they have ridges in the road, so when I'm hitting them, the suspension's doing this all the time. Okay, now I will explain about shock absorbers later, because they heat up as they move. The more they move, the quicker they move, the hotter they get. Okay, so they can fail, and there is a way of telling. And this is what you do with a maintenance routine, is go around and check certain components at certain times to make sure you're on top of it, you know where you're at with the vehicle. Yeah, this I would call PMI, which is preventative maintenance inspections, and I will talk about that because it's important. Yeah, so third thing, environmental conditions, yeah, which you have to consider very, very seriously. Where you live will affect how you look after your vehicle. Now, I will give an example of something I read in a magazine years and years ago, and this was about Land Rovers. This guy took a Land Rover over to Iceland, and they were driving in volcanic dust, which pumice, this comes from volcanoes, pumice is an abrasive, yeah, and what happened is the dust was getting into the hub seals on the stub axles and wearing the hub seals out, so they were actually leaking everywhere, letting the dust in, and of course that is a potential failure. Yeah, that's just one consideration. Yeah, of course then there's dust as well, which gets into air filters, and dust actually causes a lot of problems. Yeah, when we have flooding in the UK, the roads the trucks will still move on the roads. And what happens after 2 months, I get electrical problems because of water in the electrics, and I get bearing problems from wheel bearings that have had water get in past the seal, and then they've either rusted the bearings onto the shaft, or it's got into the grease. Yeah, and sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's not. What you find is the bearing will start to fail. This is why we have regular maintenance checks, to make sure that we can keep on top of it. If a bearing is going to fail, it will give you warning. On a truck, because the thing's so damn big, you can't hear it, therefore you need to do a maintenance procedure to check that sort of thing. Okay, yeah, so temperature related, weather related, obviously. If you got snow quite a lot of the time, hot and cold, hot and cold, hot and cold causes problems. Dust causes problems with air filters, for instance, and wear and tear where it shouldn't do. Water obviously gets in places. So this is the type of thing that you have to take into consideration, and you have to think about with your vehicle, so you can plan your maintenance schedules around that. Okay, UK, obviously, yeah, we get sun in the summer and then we get wet the rest of the time. So whatever's wet will get wet, and when it dries out, it will corrode. Yes, it does, especially electrics as well. Yeah. So the last one is planned usage. Yeah, planned usage, which is really for the unexpected and the expected. So you know what you're doing roughly with your vehicle from a daily basis. If you have a vehicle in storage, for instance, that will actually need maintenance as well. Yes, things degrade over time if they're not looked after. Yeah, you need to, theoretically, you need to use a vehicle. It's like a human body. If you sit down for too long, you get all stiff. Yeah, if you move about a lot more, okay, you get wear and tear, but less of it because the lubricants are being moved about. Yeah, and I will tell you about that when we get onto the keto diet. Yeah, that's very, very important, because, well, I'll tell you this actually, tires have a UV protective compound in the tires, but the UV compound doesn't work unless the rubber is constantly worked. Yeah, so if you have a vehicle stand up for a period of time, it will actually degrade without the UV light being hit onto it. So if you're thinking you've got a prepper vehicle in your garage that's on stands, yeah, then you might get in it and the tyre will go boom. Yes, it does happen. I know some guy who bought some second-hand tyres that have been in storage for years. He put them on his Land Rover, came down from Scotland, and he had 2 blowouts. He had 2 tyres blow out. Can you believe it? Yeah, just old rubber. Yeah, we will talk about this. We will talk about this. Yeah. What the thing is that you have to put your mind to as well is also unplanned usage in environments that you might find yourself in if you have to bug out, for instance, which, yeah, okay, you might have to go on to rough track roads, therefore that will change the way that you are going to look after your vehicle and prepare your vehicle anyway, but also how you maintain it. You generally have to have tip-top condition oils in it as well, and sometimes extreme oils. We'll talk about this, extreme power steering fluid, all that sort of thing later. Yeah, but mainly you have to think ahead. Preppers do this anyway, don't they? They'll think, well, okay, we're gonna have a shit hits the fan situation. I'm living in a certain area where it's wet, plus the roads are going to degrade. Yes, that is probably the worst one, which leads me on to the Ukraine. Yeah, because I spent quite a few years living there, and I spent years travelling backwards and forwards in motor vehicles to there in the summertime. Yeah, and working out which vehicles are right for the conditions of the road, because they are horrendous. They are absolutely horrendous. You get good bits near the city where they have the money. You get outside there, you can have all sorts of conditions, because the weather heats up the bitumen, then it cools down and cracks. Yeah, and they don't have the money to maintain. I even went into a town where the road had gone. It was just dust. It was concrete that had got hot and cold over a long period of time, and it just broke up. Yeah, so you're driving down a road with all these factories which were skeletons. Yeah, it was a popular industrial area at one time. Got into the town, turned left to go over a bridge, and the bridge was only just usable because the concrete was collapsing out of it. Yeah, I'd already committed myself, otherwise I wouldn't have gone over in a van that I'd taken over there. You know, so yeah, I mean, it's one of those things when you look at a place where it's had an economic disaster, the collapse of the Soviet Union, and then they've recovered. They haven't recovered at all in the Ukraine, which is where I've actually learned by experience is a lot of skills which I wouldn't have other considered because I'm in a more developed country. But as this in the UK, especially now after COVID, things are starting to collapse. They don't have the money for the councils. They're not going to spend money on the roads. Then you have to consider that as an unplanned thing. All right, so that would have to go into a maintenance schedule, looking after shock absorbers, making sure the tyres are in good condition. They don't have blisters on them. Yeah, because if you hit a pothole, maybe once, you can hit the rim on the tyre and you will get a blister on the side of your tyre, and that could burst, or you'll get a wobbly wheel. Yeah. Of course, we will go more into these things. This is a talk, first of all, and I've given you like 15-16 minutes worth of thinking or ideas to think about. Okay, so in a nutshell, you need to think about your vehicle, its age of it, and its history. Okay, what you use it for now and what you want to use it for. So that's vehicle usage now, mileage, and the environment you're working in, and what possibly you will use it for if you're using it for a bug out vehicle, because you might even want to put a trailer on the back of it and pull a trailer. Okay, and I'll tell you, some people do never look after their trailers. They take the trailers out and then they have a blowout on the tyre, or the wheel falls off, the bearing collapses, because they just expect it's going to be okay. Yeah. One last story. I worked in a fleet haulage company. They had trailers standing up for a year, and then they prepared them to send them off to do a job. And what happened, because the weight had sat on the wheel bearings, I was doing 4 bearings out of 6 on each one of those trailers, because where the weight had sat, it actually cracked the case hardening on the bearing. So once it started moving, the bearings started to break up. Yeah, actually very, very serious, very expensive. And it's just one of those things. It's a wake-up call. You think, my God, why was that? You find out why, and then of course you have to do the maintenance to make sure that the vehicle is not going to get stranded somewhere, because this was an international haulage company, so it's going abroad. And you can imagine what it's like when you go abroad. You have all sorts of services if you like, that want to charge the earth for simple work. Yeah, so anyway, that's enough now. Go away and start to think about your vehicle, jot them down on a list, and start to get some sort of idea on your vehicle, and I'll introduce it into the videos as we go along to take into consideration these points that I've talked about, because that is basically maintenance at the end of the day. That's the biggest part of the maintenance, is knowing what your vehicle is going to do, and then plan your inspections and your oil changes and your component replacement around that. Yes? Okay, so all right, I'll see you in the next video. Take it easy, and don't worry, it's all right. It's not as bad as you might imagine, actually. See you later.